The wind howled through the ancient ruins, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that seemed to grip the very air. Deep within the shadowed recesses of forgotten history, there lay a symbol that had long been veiled in mystery, a symbol that, when deciphered, would awaken forces from a time long past. This was no ordinary sign. This was the Leviathan cross. For centuries, the world has whispered about its power, some calling it a force of destruction, others a key to forbidden knowledge. It has appeared in ancient texts, in occult rituals, and in the most dangerous corners of the esoteric world. But what if this symbol, so often misunderstood, held a far darker purpose than anyone could ever imagine? What if it was never meant to be uncovered at all? The Leviathan cross first surfaced in the annals of history centuries ago, etched into the pages of an ancient manuscript that no one dared touch. It was a symbol that appeared during times of great turmoil, times when the very fabric of society seemed to fray at the edges. But despite its significance, no one truly understood it. Only the most hardened of occultists had ever sought its true meaning, and even they seemed to leave it alone, as if instinctively aware that some knowledge was best left undisturbed. And yet, that did not stop others. The symbol would find its way into the hands of those who, for reasons unknown, would risk everything to uncover its hidden truth. Those who believed that the secrets locked within the Leviathan cross would grant them unimaginable power, power to control life, death, and everything in between. But at what cost? It was said that the first true understanding of the cross was attained in the depths of a forgotten library, hidden beneath the ruins of an ancient civilization. In the dark corners of the world, among the rotting scrolls and cracked manuscripts, one man, an occult scholar, found the symbol. He was drawn to it, almost as though it called to him in his dreams. The moment he laid his eyes on the etched lines of the Leviathan cross, something inside him stirred. He knew that this was no mere symbol. This was something far greater, far darker. In his obsession to unlock its meaning, he began to delve deeper into forbidden rituals, tracing the symbol back through time, through civilizations that had long since vanished. Each discovery led him further down a path of madness, as though the more he uncovered, the more his own soul was being consumed by the very thing he sought to understand. But what did the Leviathan cross truly represent? What was its purpose? Was it simply a symbol of spiritual balance, of the eternal struggle between body and soul? Or was it something more? Something darker? As the scholar unraveled the mysteries one by one, his once calm demeanor began to falter. He had found something that no mortal mind should ever have known. The ritual was simple. The steps were precise. But there was something wrong about it. As the scholar, trembling with anticipation, prepared to invoke the power of the cross, the room around him seemed to close in. The very air grew thick, as if it were alive with unseen forces. He could feel a presence, something old, something ancient, awakening. As he spoke the final words of the incantation, the world seemed to warp and twist. Shadows danced on the walls, moving as though they had minds of their own. And then there was silence, the kind of silence that seemed to crush everything in its wake. The scholar, frozen in terror, realized too late what he had unleashed. The symbol had awakened something he was never meant to understand. The following morning, the library was found in ruins. The scholar was gone, his body never to be found. Only the faintest remnants of his research remained, scattered on the floor, covered in dust. But there was something else. An imprint, a mark that looked eerily like the Leviathan cross, the same symbol that had driven the scholar to madness. Who or what had the symbol called forth? What had it done to him? Was the Leviathan cross merely a symbol of cosmic balance? Or was it a doorway, a vessel for something far darker? And if so, what happened to those who dared seek its meaning? As the years passed, the symbol would continue to haunt the shadows, appearing in the most unexpected places. It would surface in old manuscripts, in the hidden corners of occult libraries, and in the darkest of rituals. But each time it did, it left behind a trail of broken minds, ruined lives, and unexplained disappearances. The power of the Leviathan cross seemed to grow stronger with every passing year, drawing those who were foolish enough to seek its forbidden knowledge. But no one seemed to understand. No one could ever truly comprehend what the symbol was. Each person who encountered it was left with more questions than answers. Was it a key to eternal life? Or was it the harbinger of a fate worse than death? And who, if anyone, controlled its power? Rumors circulated. Whispers of a group, a secret order, who had long worshipped the Leviathan cross. A group whose purpose was not to understand the symbol, but to serve it, to be consumed by it. They were said to gather in the dead of night, performing rituals that no one else could understand. And in their wake, strange occurrences followed. People who had crossed their path would disappear, only to be found later, changed, hollow-eyed, and empty, as if they had encountered something they were never meant to see. But what was this group truly after? Were they the keepers of the Leviathan cross? Or were they simply its victims, unable to escape its grip? What if they were not just serving the symbol, but feeding it, offering up sacrifices to whatever dark force lay behind it? And in the modern world, things continued to happen. A new generation of seekers, people who had no idea what they were dealing with, began to stumble upon the symbol one by one, each of them drawn into the same web of mystery, the same spiral of horror as those before them. The question remained, why was this symbol so alluring? Why did it continue to call to people across the ages? Was it merely a relic of a forgotten past, or was it something much more insidious? And if it was, what would happen when it finally revealed its true nature to the world? There was one truth that no one could deny. Those who sought the Leviathan cross were never the same. Some might survive their encounters with it, but they would never escape its grasp. Others, those who were truly consumed, disappeared without a trace, and no one, not a single soul, had ever returned to tell their tale. The Leviathan cross was no longer just a symbol. It had become a curse, a living force, waiting to be unleashed once more. For years, the mystery of the Leviathan cross lay dormant, like a sleeping beast beneath the earth's surface. But sometimes, the most dangerous forces are the ones that sleep the longest, waiting for the right moment to stir. It wasn't long before the symbol began to reappear, this time in places where no one had ever thought to look. It started innocently enough, an ancient artifact discovered in the back of a dusty museum vault, a long-forgotten relic buried under centuries of neglect. It was a small pendant, barely more than an ornament. To the untrained eye, it appeared to be no more than an interesting curiosity. But to those who knew where to look, it was something much darker. The pendant bore the unmistakable design, of the Leviathan cross, and the moment it was uncovered, it was as if the very air around it shifted. People who were drawn to the pendant began to change. At first, it was subtle, an unease in their step, a tension in their gaze. But soon, the changes grew more pronounced. They spoke in strange tongues, their words laced with an eerie cadence that seemed foreign even to the most seasoned linguists. They whispered of visions, visions of vast, dark skies, of looming shapes in the distance, watching from the edges of time. Their lives spiraled into madness, and with each passing day, their behavior became more erratic, more dangerous. One by one, they vanished. Some were found in remote locations, their bodies twisted into grotesque shapes, their eyes wide with terror, as if they had seen something far beyond human comprehension. Others disappeared without a trace, their last known location the same as the pendant. What had happened to them? Had they unlocked something they weren't supposed to? Had the Leviathan cross marked them for something worse than death? And yet, this was just the beginning. The symbol continued to spread, seeping into places where it should never have gone. People began to encounter it in the most unlikely locations, in the corners of old libraries, on the walls of forgotten catacombs, even in the deepest recesses of the internet. It wasn't just occultists and scholars searching for it anymore. The symbol had found its way into the hands of those with no understanding of its power. Innocent people who thought it was simply an interesting design, a piece of history to be admired. But for those who came into contact with the Leviathan cross, it was never so simple. Each new encounter seemed to pull them deeper into its grip, like a black hole that sucked them in, dragging them into a world of nightmares. It was as though the symbol had a will of its own, an ancient, malevolent force that called out to anyone who dared look upon it. The question remained, what did the symbol want? And why were so many drawn to it despite the horrors it had caused? As more and more people began to study it, the truth started to emerge, although no one could make sense of it. The Leviathan cross wasn't just a symbol, it was a gateway, one that connected the material world to something much older, much darker, something beyond human comprehension. It was said to be a link to an ancient race, beings who had long since disappeared from the world, but whose influence lingered like a shadow, waiting for the right moment to return. But why would anyone want to open this door? Why would they risk summoning something from beyond the veil? The answer lay hidden in the darkest corners of occult history. For centuries, groups had tried to uncover the secrets of the Leviathan cross. Some believed it was a path to ultimate power, to the ability to control life and death, to transcend the mortal world and achieve immortality. But others, more cautious, understood the true nature of the symbol. They knew it wasn't just a tool, it was a trap. Over the years, there had been whispers of a secret society, an ancient order who had once sought to use the Leviathan cross for their own purposes. They had believed that by invoking the symbol's power, they could control the forces of the universe itself. But their attempts had ended in catastrophe. Those who had tried to harness the Leviathan cross had vanished, leaving nothing behind but shattered lives and broken bodies. This group, known only in legends as the Keepers, was said to have tried to seal the power of the Leviathan cross away, hiding it from the world. But what if the power had never been fully contained? What if the symbol had somehow found a way to free itself, to escape the bounds of the ancient seals? And what if it was waiting for the right person to unlock it once again? As the years went by, the symbols began to appear in the strangest of places, tattooed on the bodies of unsuspecting individuals, carved into the walls of abandoned buildings, scrawled on bathroom stalls, and even hidden within the code of digital files. Each new appearance sent shock waves through those who knew the significance of the symbol, as though it were silently calling out to those who would be its next victims. The most terrifying part? There seemed to be no rhyme or reason to it. The symbol would surface in places that made no sense, as if it was choosing its next victims randomly. But what if it wasn't random at all? What if there was a pattern, a hidden message embedded in each of its appearances, leading towards something much larger, much darker than anyone could have imagined? A theory began to circulate, an unsettling theory that suggested the Leviathan cross wasn't just a symbol of darkness, but a reflection of something much more profound. Perhaps it wasn't a mere tool for evil, but a marker, something that identified individuals who were susceptible to its power, a signal to those who had the potential to unlock its full force. What if it wasn't a curse at all, but a test, a challenge to see who could survive the forces it unleashed? Those who survived, it was said, would be granted unimaginable power. But at what cost? For no one had ever come back unchanged. The few who had walked away from the Leviathan cross spoke of strange dreams, of voices calling to them in the dead of night, of a cold, unrelenting presence that followed them wherever they went. They said they could hear the symbol in their minds, whispering to them, telling them things they could never unlearn. But what if the symbol wasn't just a tool of power? What if it was something far worse? What if it was a living entity, an ancient, malevolent force that had existed long before humanity and would continue to exist long after? The more people tried to understand the Leviathan cross, the more they realized one horrifying truth. The symbol was never meant to be understood. It was a mystery that was meant to remain hidden, locked away from the world forever. Yet, those who sought it, those who dared to unravel its secrets, would be forever marked by it. The cross wasn't just a symbol, it was a warning, and those who ignored it, those who tried to unlock its mysteries, would find themselves bound to it forever. The Leviathan cross was not simply a relic from the past. It was a reminder that some doors are never meant to be opened. As the years bled into each other, the whispers of the Leviathan cross grew louder, darker. It was no longer just a symbol. It had become a force, a living, breathing entity that had clawed its way back into the fabric of reality, lurking beneath the surface, waiting to reveal itself when the time was right. And that time, it seemed, was rapidly approaching. The latest discovery came from an unlikely source, a seemingly ordinary man, a researcher, a scholar of ancient artifacts with no prior involvement in the occult. His interest in the symbol was purely academic at first. He had stumbled upon an ancient map, one that led him to a forgotten city buried beneath the sands of the desert. His mission was simple: to uncover the long-lost secrets of an ancient civilization, and in doing so, perhaps unlock the key to a past that had been forgotten by the world. But what he found beneath the surface would be far more than he bargained for. The city was an enigma. Its architecture defied explanation, its design so alien to modern sensibilities that it appeared to have been constructed by beings from another world. But it was what he uncovered within the deepest catacombs that sent chills down his spine. There, etched into the stone walls, was the Leviathan cross, larger than life, its design more intricate and terrifying than any he had ever seen before. It was as if the symbol had been waiting for him, guiding him to this very moment, to this very place. The deeper he went, the more the atmosphere grew heavy, as though the air itself was thick with the presence of something otherworldly. As he traced his fingers along the cold, ancient stone, he began to feel a strange sensation, a prickling on the back of his neck, the sense that he was no longer alone. His heart raced as he stared at the cross, his mind struggling to process what it was that had drawn him to this place. He had read about the Leviathan cross before, of course, but never in such detail, never in such terrifying proximity. Then it happened. A voice, low and guttural, yet somehow clear, echoed through the chamber. It was not a voice of a man, nor was it the voice of any living creature. It was the voice of something ancient, something far beyond human comprehension. "You should not have come." The scholar froze, his blood running cold. His eyes darted around the chamber, but there was no one. The silence was deafening, the only sound the faint echo of his own breath. He thought he imagined it. It was impossible, wasn't it? But the feeling lingered. That feeling, that presence. It was not something his mind could rationalize. And that's when he saw it. Something moving in the shadows. Something watching him. Before he could react, the walls of the chamber seemed to pulse, as though the entire structure was alive. The symbols surrounding the Leviathan cross began to shift, their meanings twisting and contorting before his very eyes. The ground beneath him trembled, and he realized too late that he had awakened something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the tremors stopped. The shadows receded. The voice faded into nothing. But the damage had been done. The scholar was no longer the same man. For days he wandered the ruins, his mind unraveling. He could hear whispers in the wind, voices calling to him, urging him to go further, to uncover more. He couldn't resist. He was drawn to the symbol, drawn to its power. His body grew weak, but his obsession with the Leviathan cross only grew stronger. He knew he had to uncover its secrets. But as he did, he became more and more disconnected from reality. What was once a search for knowledge had become a descent into madness. No one would ever see him again. Weeks passed, and the world outside remained oblivious to the terror that had been awakened. The scholar's disappearance was just another cold case, another unsolved mystery. But for those few who knew about the symbol, who had come into contact with its dark history, the warnings had already been set into motion. The Leviathan cross was no longer just a symbol of occult knowledge. It had become an invitation to those who were willing to pay the price for its forbidden secrets. But there was a deeper, darker truth about the symbol. It wasn't just waiting to be unlocked. It was feeding. Those who sought the power of the Leviathan cross weren't just unlocking a door to knowledge. They were opening a gate to a deeper, far more insidious force. It wasn't merely a symbol. It was a conduit, a portal, a doorway to something ancient and hungry. The more people searched for it, the more it grew. It had been waiting for centuries, perhaps longer, biding its time until it found those who would unlock it. And once unlocked, it would claim them, their souls, their minds, their very existence. As the stories of disappearances and madness spread, there was one question that hung over it all. Why? Why had the Leviathan cross endured for so long? What was it waiting for? The answer, however, remained out of reach, hidden in the shadows, just beyond the edge of comprehension. For those who sought it, the symbol was a riddle, one that could never truly be solved. It was a puzzle that offered no solution, only a deepening spiral into darkness. And once you began to unravel its mysteries, there was no turning back. Those who had come closest to understanding the true power of the Leviathan cross were either dead or lost to madness. The others, the ones who were too cautious to risk it, too wise to even tempt fate, had no idea what was lurking in the shadows. But they would. The Leviathan cross was no longer something to be studied. It was something to be feared. And as its power continued to spread, as more and more people came into contact with it, the world would find itself on the brink of something far darker than anyone could ever imagine. It was no longer just a symbol of the occult. It was a living, breathing force that had set its sights on the world, and the question was no longer if it would come for them, but when. The whispers of the Leviathan cross did not fade. They only grew louder, more insistent, calling to those who were willing to listen. As the world turned its gaze elsewhere, as the distractions of modern life consumed everyone's attention, the symbol lingered in the shadows, quietly waiting. People who dared to seek it never returned, or if they did, they were forever changed, their minds fractured, their spirits tainted by the very knowledge they sought to uncover. It was as if the Leviathan cross was not just a symbol of power, but a test to see how far one was willing to go, how much one was willing to sacrifice, to comprehend what was not meant to be understood. One of the most disturbing accounts came from a small research team that ventured into the deep forests of Eastern Europe. There, hidden in a crumbling monastery, they found a journal, a relic from centuries ago. In it, the final pages were scrawled in a frantic, barely legible hand, detailing the findings of an expedition that had gone horribly wrong. The team had discovered an ancient chamber beneath the monastery, hidden beneath the earth for who knew how long. Within that chamber, they found not just the Leviathan cross, but something far more horrifying, an altar upon which the cross had been placed, surrounded by symbols that no man should ever gaze upon. The walls were covered in strange, moving images, depictions of figures twisted in agony, caught in some eternal cycle of suffering. But what terrified the researchers the most wasn't what they had uncovered. It was what they had heard. The journal detailed the sounds, whispers at first, then screams, the air thick with the stench of decay and death. Each of them had felt it, that presence, watching them from the dark corners of the room. As they deciphered the writings on the wall, they realized too late that they had been chosen, that they had unlocked something that should have remained buried forever. The last entry in the journal read simply, "It is awake, it is coming for us." The team was never heard from again. The more people encountered the Leviathan cross, the more they realized one horrifying truth. The symbol was not just an artifact, it was an entity, a being of unimaginable power that had existed long before humanity. The more it was studied, the more it fed, and the more it grew. But what did it want? What was the true purpose of the Leviathan cross? What had it been waiting for? It wasn't just a power, it was a hunger. The cross itself had been a seal, a lock, created by an ancient order that had long since faded into legend. This order had sought to protect humanity from what lay on the other side of the veil, but when the Leviathan cross was uncovered, it became clear that this was not a simple key to knowledge or power. It was something much worse, something that wanted to break free. The world had thought the symbol's power was dormant, but it had been awake for far longer than anyone realized, biding its time, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature. As more and more people discovered it, the cross became more active, more dangerous. It began to pull at the fabric of reality, unraveling everything in its wake. Each discovery, each ritual, each encounter brought the cross closer to its final form. The Leviathan cross was more than a symbol of destruction. It was the catalyst for a transformation, a dark rebirth that would bring about the end of everything, and no one, no matter how powerful or wise, could stop it. By now, the legend of the Leviathan cross had spread far and wide. In whispered conversations, in the hidden corners of the internet, people spoke of it in hushed tones. They were drawn to it, some out of curiosity, others seeking power, and still others out of a desire to understand. But there was one thing they all had in common. They were searching for something that could not be found. The truth was beyond their reach, hidden behind layers of fear and darkness. One night, in a quiet city, a group of researchers, academics, historians, and occultists decided to investigate the cross once again. They were determined to uncover the secrets once and for all, to learn what others had failed to. But this time, they were not prepared for what they would awaken. The ritual they performed was a dangerous one that had been attempted countless times before, but always with disastrous results. But they were confident. They thought they understood the risks. They thought they were prepared. But as the words of the incantation escaped their lips, the world around them began to shift. The air grew thick with an oppressive, suffocating force. Shadows stretched and twisted unnaturally. The walls of the room seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The symbol began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, until it burned with a blinding light. And in that moment, they realized the truth. They were not uncovering knowledge. They were unlocking something far worse. It was then that the true power of the Leviathan cross was revealed, something that no one had dared imagine. The symbol was not merely a connection to an ancient past, nor was it a bridge between worlds. It was the very embodiment of chaos itself, a force that existed beyond time, beyond space, beyond understanding, and it was awake. The room exploded with a deafening roar, and the researchers were thrown to the ground. Their screams were swallowed by the chaos, and the world itself seemed to crack open, as if the fabric of reality had been torn apart. When the authorities arrived, there was nothing left, no bodies, no traces, only the symbol, the Leviathan cross, burned into the ground, its power still pulsing, still alive. But now the symbol had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer just a symbol of occult knowledge. It was a harbinger of the end. The cross had consumed them all. What was the Leviathan cross? What was its true nature? It had been many things to many people, a symbol, a key, a curse. But in the end, it was more than any of those things. It was a test, a force, an entity that had been waiting for the world to catch up, to reach the point where it could be unlocked. Now, as the world turns its gaze toward the future, the question remains, will anyone ever truly understand the Leviathan cross? Or is it destined to remain a dark enigma, forever sealed in shadow? One thing is certain, for those who have come too close, for those who have dared to look upon it, there is no turning back. The Leviathan cross is no longer a symbol. It is a force, a living, breathing force that will continue to haunt the world, feeding on the curiosity, the ambition, and the desperation of those who seek to understand it. And when the world is ready, when the final pieces fall into place, the true reckoning will come, because the Leviathan cross is not just waiting, it is watching, it is hungry, and it will never stop